In a small village nestled among the lush green hills of ancient India, there lived a wise and revered monk named Mahendra. His wisdom was legendary, spreading far and wide among the villagers who often sought his counsel in times of distress. It was said that Mahendra possessed the answers to life's most perplexing questions, and indeed many left his presence with a sense of peace and clarity. One day a young man named Aaron arrived at the serene monastery. Aaron was a strong, vibrant young man full of energy, yet today his face was etched with deep frustration. His eyes, once bright and filled with the enthusiasm of youth, now appeared clouded and tense, as though he carried a burden far too heavy for his shoulders to bear. "Revered Mahendra," Aaron began, his voice heavy with a mix of respect and desperation as he bowed deeply before the monk. "I have come seeking your guidance. My mind, it's in turmoil, and peace feels like a distant dream. I work tirelessly every day, striving to provide for my family, to achieve success. But no matter how much I accomplish, I am always worried, always tense. My mind feels like a bowstring stretched too tight, ready to snap at any moment. What must I do to find peace?" Mahendra gazed at Aaron with compassionate, understanding eyes and nodded slowly. "You speak of tension like a bowstring, Aaron. That is a wise comparison. Let us explore this further. Come with me." The monk led Aaron out of the tranquil monastery and into the surrounding forest, their footsteps falling softly on the earth. They walked in contemplative silence, the rustling of leaves and the distant calls of birds their only companions. After a time, they came to a clearing where a young archer was practicing his aim. The archer stood poised, his bow drawn, his entire being focused intensely on the target ahead. "Observe this young archer," Mahendra said gently, his voice carrying a note of calm wisdom. "See how he holds his bow, the tension in the string, the concentration in his eyes. What do you notice?" Arun watched the archer closely, his eyes narrowing as he studied the scene. He saw the young man's brow furrowed in deep concentration, his muscles taut as he held the bow steady, aiming the arrow with precision. The bowstring was pulled back tightly, almost to its breaking point, and for a brief, tense moment it seemed as if it might snap. But then, with a swift and smooth release, the arrow flew straight and true, striking the very center of the target. "He is skilled," Aaron remarked, a hint of admiration in his voice. "But the tension in the string is palpable. It is necessary, I suppose, to ensure the arrow flies true. Without it, the arrow would not reach its mark." "Indeed," Mahendra replied, nodding in agreement, his voice filled with quiet strength. "The tension in the bowstring is necessary for the arrow to fulfill its purpose. But tell me, what would happen if the string were left taut, constantly under that strain even when not in use?" Aaron furrowed his brow in thought, his voice softening as he responded. "If the string remained tense, it would eventually weaken and snap. The bow would be useless, and the archer would have nothing left with which to aim." "Exactly," said Mahendra, a smile playing on his lips. "Now consider this. Is your mind not like the bow? Tension is necessary at times to achieve your goals, to stay focused and driven. But if your mind remains under constant strain, always wound tight, it too will eventually break. And when it does, what will you have left to guide you?" Arun's eyes widened as the realization struck him. "But how do I release this tension, revered one? I cannot simply abandon my responsibilities. I must work, I must strive. How can I find a balance?" Mahendra nodded thoughtfully and gestured for Arun to sit beside him on a fallen tree trunk. The monk then began to speak in a calm, measured tone, as if reciting a story from memory. "Let me tell you a story, Aaron," he said. "It is the story of the Buddha and the sitar player." Aaron leaned forward, his attention fully captured. "Once, the Buddha was traveling with his disciples when they came upon a man sitting by the side of the road. The man was a musician, a player of the sitar, a stringed instrument. But his face was troubled, and his hand shook as he tried to play. The Buddha, always compassionate, asked the man, "Why do you seem so troubled, my friend?" The musician sighed deeply and replied, "I cannot find the right sound. If I tighten the strings too much, they snap. If I leave them too loose, the sound is dull and lifeless. I cannot find the balance." The Buddha smiled gently and said, "In your hands, my friend, lies the secret to peace. Just as the sitar must have its strings neither too tight nor too loose to produce beautiful music, so too must your mind find its balance. A mind that is too tense is like a string that will snap, but a mind that is too lax will produce no music at all." The musician looked at the Buddha, his eyes beginning to shine with understanding. "How do I find this balance, great teacher?" The Buddha replied, "You must learn to release the tension when it is no longer needed and to tighten it only when necessary. Meditate upon your actions, your thoughts, and your intentions. Be mindful of when you are straining too hard, and know when to let go. In this way, your life will produce the most harmonious music." Mahendra paused, letting the story sink in. Arun sat silently, absorbing the monk's words, feeling the weight of the tension in his own mind. "So, Arun," Mahendra continued, "what does this story teach you about your own life?" Arun closed his eyes, reflecting deeply. "It teaches me that I have been holding my mind too tight, always worrying, always striving, without knowing when to release. I must learn to find the balance, to know when to focus and when to let go. Only then can I find peace." Mahendra smiled warmly. "Exactly. Balance is the key, Arun. Work hard, strive towards your goals, but also know when to relax, to breathe, to let go of the tension that no longer serves you. Just as the bowstring must be released after the arrow is shot, so too must your mind find its rest." Arun opened his eyes, feeling a sense of clarity he hadn't experienced in a long time. "But how do I practice this balance, revered one? How do I train my mind to know when to let go?" Mahendra stood and beckoned Arun to follow him back to the monastery. "There are many ways, Arun. Meditation is a powerful tool, as is mindfulness in your daily actions. But perhaps the simplest way to begin is to observe nature. Nature itself is the greatest teacher of balance." As they walked back through the forest, Mahendra pointed out the trees, the flowing river, and the birds flying overhead. "See how the trees stand tall, yet they sway with the wind. They do not resist it, but neither do they let it uproot them. The river flows steadily, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but it always moves forward, finding its path without force. The birds fly with grace, knowing when to soar high and when to rest on a branch." Arun watched the natural world with new eyes, seeing in it the lessons Mahendra spoke of. He felt the tension in his mind begin to ease, as if the weight he had carried was gradually lifting. "Remember, Arun," Mahendra said as they reached the monastery, "your mind is a powerful tool, but it is also delicate. Treat it with care, nurture it, and allow it the balance it needs. In doing so, you will find not only success, but also the peace you seek." Arun bowed deeply to Mahendra, gratitude filling his heart.